All right, so in this screencast, we will look more into user interface design and so on in Android. So basically, or layout design. So basically, we looked at this layout, played around with it. We used find view by ID. I'll remove this. We don't need it anymore. And I'll help you build a more detailed kind of UI. Let's see. So basically, this is a constraint layout. You could see here there is a component tree. It tells you that the base component is a constraint layout, right? The constraint layout will lay the components and set up constraints between them. So you can between the components or between the components and the constraint layout itself. So for example, let's say we want to create a form, right? So I can go in here, create a form, and I want every single component in the screen to, let's say, for example, to have some kind of a padding. So if you go here, you see the component is just hugging the edges of the parent, right? So what I could do is I could go, for example, in the code, right? And you could see that there are two components. There is the constraint layout, and then under it there is a text view. So if you go inside the constraint layout, there are parameters. These are all attributes that control it. I could say, for example, padding, right? And I want the padding to be, let's say, 20 dp, okay? And if I click on save, and I go back to the layout, to the design, you could see that the component is pushed in. There is a padding of 20 dp from all directions of the layout. Like if I go and pad it, I do this here. It's not obvious here, but let me undo. I'll show you in a little bit. But if I do that, okay, what if I want that box to occupy? If I drag this constraint from here to here, what it does is it creates a spring between them. So this constraint is trying to fit it equally from both sides. So what I could do is I can go here in the constraint layout widget, and you could see these arrows here on the side. If I click on the arrow, I am indicating that it needs to be a fixed width. We see here now it's became matches constraints or this or this or this. So basically now you could see that it is, I could change the type of constraint, right? Now if you click on it again, and you could see now it is what? Wrap content, meaning it's going to wrap the content. You click on that one, this means it's a fixed width. In mobile design, you rarely used fixed width. Why? Because fixed width will fix the width of a component, but what happens when you use different sizes, different screen sizes? So if you have a component that's fixed at specific width, it shows up very well in a large device, and then when you're using a smaller device, the component will try to render at that width, and it's going to cause a problem. Unless it's small width that you are using, it's fine. But for example, for pictures and so on, it becomes challenging to use fixed width. But anyhow, so that's this one, and then this one is to match the constraint, right? So match the constraint is just basically what it's doing. You could see now it's just expanding it to the end, and you see the padding, which is 20, which is at the constraint layout level, right? And if you look at all the constraints, you could see if you scroll down, you could see here is the padding, and you could see the padding is 20 dp, which is I have set up in code, which is much faster. But you can do that all in the attribute window here, right? So now I can do this, right? So I don't need it to go all the way, but I just need it to wrap. Let's say I want to also remove this constraint. I want it to go all the way to the left here. Here it is. And let's say I wanted to also create a component that will sit beside it. So let's say I want also to create this, for example, let's say it will say email, right? I could say, for example, this is email, right? That's the email of the person that I'm looking for. And then basically I want to create another edit text. I have an edit text to catch the email. So here it is, the email. All right, here we are. And I want this one to be to the left of this guy, and then all the way to the end. And basically I want the top of this, or let's say the bottom of this, to be to the bottom of this, right? Of course it's going all the way up. That's mainly because of that constraint. So basically I could remove this constraint, right? Here it is. And you can see that they are set up like this, and I can make this guy is the one that's at the top, right? So I can make this one is the one is at the top. So basically this gives you an idea of how you can set up or lay down these constraints. So now this one is like this, right? And the top of the bottom of this is laid down here, and the top of it is here, and then this is on the left. I could just go here and click here, and this is going to take the whole remaining space, right? I want to have a padding between them. I can do that also. So basically I can have padding between these two. So I can come here and I say I want a 16, just a little bit of difference between them, and so on. So basically you could see that I created a very simple layout, but I can control that through the constraints that I can set up. Here is email, and then I can type something here. Something else to pay attention to is that what if you want to show like a hint here or something to tell the user that this text field is going to receive an email. So if you look at the edit text, so if you click on an edit text, there's something called hint here. I could say, for example, enter email, right? Email, here it is. And basically here it is, it says enter email, right? So basically this is not the text inside the edit text, it's just a hint. So when you click on it, you could see you can enter something and it overrides this hint, okay? That's one thing to think about, okay, and to remember. Another thing is that in a lot of these hints, I'm entering the text directly here, right? But a good practice is to store them as strings and then use the strings here. So let me just cut this, and then you see beside the hint there is a small box. I know it doesn't appear very well, but you see this small box beside it. If you click on it, it tells you, okay, what do you want to do? I want to create a string. So basically these are all the strings in the app. Some strings are app-based strings and some strings are Android level strings. So I don't have that many strings. So let's say I click on plus, right? I want to create a string value, right? And then basically what's the name of the string value? I'll say call it hello, the hello string value. What's the name of it? And then this is, I'll say, or sorry, enter email. So I'll call it enter email, right? It cannot, the resource name cannot have a space in it, right? And then basically the text is enter email, and I click on OK, and basically it created an enter email. I click on that and I say OK. And basically what happened is that when you click on it, you could see now it's not using enter email directly, but it's referring to this, it's a string variable, and its name is called enter email. If you look under your project and you look at values under strings, you can see that it created a string value called enter email, right? So one way to do it is to create it through the layout like this, or I can come here and create my own string. I can go here and say string, right, and give it a name. I'll say, for example, email label, for example, email label, and I could say, for example, this is just email, right? So I created a string variable called email label. I can go here. I can do the same thing to this guy. So basically this guy just shows email, and it says email here in the text. Instead, I could say at string email label, the one that I just created, and here we go, and you see it shows up as email. Now when you run it, you see that it will show up as email and email label. Okay, so basically why is it showing this red? It's because we changed this. I think we changed the color at some stage here. Let's see, can I undo? Yes, I did undo. Now if we run it again, it will show up the correct color, but anyhow, so yeah, so if you look here, it will say enter email and so on. So now we looked at how we created this. Now there are some missing, for example, some things that are missing. It says that, what is that? If you, this guy, it's not happy for some reason. So if you look at the comments, missing constraints in the constraint layout, blah blah blah. So there is a missing constraint, and probably that constraint is related to the top constraint, but anyhow, it's not an issue. And then we look here is the autofill, missing autofill hints attributes, specified autofill attributes when SDK is higher. So yeah, it will tell you exactly. I could say fix the autofill. Now it's more advanced, and then fix that problem. Now this one, does it have any fixes for me? There is some missing constraints, right? Make sure that it has a horizontal and vertical constraints. So basically there is a problem with the constraint for this guy, but it should inherit it from here. So basically this guy gets to specify the top and right, and then it's and then the email has the left, and then what we could do is and then they are set up like this, and we go from there. So anyhow, so you could see that this is how you set up these constraints. I can add as many components as I want. For example, I could go in and add another edit text. For example, I could say I want email and let's say the password. So I go here and add a password, and I want the password to follow. So I want this edge to be aligned with this edge. Here it is. And I want it to be under it, so I can do it like this. And then I want this one to be to the end of this one. And or I could do Control Z just to edit, to remove this one, and I could do click here, and I can take this guy to the end, and set up it to have to fill the whole screen, right? And if I want to have a padding between them or some margin between them, I go here and then say 16, and then there is a margin between them. Similarly, I can get a label for this guy. Here is the label. I just drag a label, right? And I can set up the label to be the password. So basically I could do this one is at the bottom of this, right? And then this one is at the end of this. And I think we set the padding to what? We set the padding to, so we have some padding. So this padding, we set it to 16. Okay, very good. So now if we take this padding and make it also 16, okay? Doesn't look very good, but we'll fix that. And the problem is mainly related to the edge, you know, so the problem is that this one is bigger than this one. So that's why it's not working. We can fix that. So let's do this. So basically what I'm going to do is that I'm going to remove this constraint, right? And that fixes this problem for the time being, right? But then I'll make this guy here, right? Okay, good. So now this guy now has is set up correctly, right? And then this one is going to be, so for example, we'll call it password, right? Password, right? We can create a string and so on for it, right? That's the password. Now we have this password set up, but then we could say that this guy, right? So this guy has this, and then the password we know is going to be bigger. Now if we run this, what happens? Let's see. And here we go. So the password is not set up correctly for some reason, and we can fix that. So the password, let's see. So maybe we can have it wrap content. Oh yeah, I know why. It's mainly because this guy depends on its width from this guy, and this guy gets its width from here, right? So anyhow, so what we could do is we could remove this constraint, and just for the time being, and basically remove also this constraint, right? Okay. Set up the password first, right? So let's set up this password thing first, right? So this is the password, right? And then this guy, we could say that it's at points to the is aligned with the password, right? While its bottom is aligned to the email, so which is already the case, right? And it's already the case here also, right? And then what we could do is we could take this to be here, right? And then we can take this one to be aligned with the longer one, which is the other one, right? So we go here, right? And then we could set up the padding to be 16, and that would set up the padding also up there, and we're good to go. So you could see that we can set up the constraints. We get exactly what we need, right? But you have to be you have to decide exactly what you want. So based on that, you can set up your constraints. So I guess now you have a good idea of how you can create strings. So for example, we have the email is set up as a string variable. Let's say the email is set up as a string variable. The password is not. So what I could do is I can copy this, go back to the strings. I can create string. I can call it password label, right? And password. And I can go back to the activity here, and I can set it up to be at string password label. Here it is, and that works, no problems. And we run it, and you can see now that it works perfect, right? And you can set up the hint for the password and all of that. And you can see the password field because we picked it up as password, right? Now to change its type, all you have to do is, you see here there is something called input type. If you click on the string on here, it will, sorry, if you click it, it's called the text password. So if you delete it, let's say we delete this, right? We can delete this, right? And you could pick something else. It could be a phone number, it could be a date, whatever. So basically you can pick whatever type it is, right? So you could see that it's a password type for the time being. So now I think now you are very experienced with edit texts, and you could see that you can lay components around. You should also play around with the constraints and play around with the attributes of these constraints. Please let me know if you have any questions.